Hi guys, I'm Andre Simone and this is my Bernie 2020 music session. Put it plainly, I've been freaking bored since I was cut from my umbilical cord. Restless days and crazy long ass nights, crowded clubs and colored hot ass lights. Well, it's clear, it's crystal clear, we all need something to get us through the night. We all need something, don't matter if it's wrong or right. We all need something. In another life I wouldn't care, making love to little Miss Truth or Dare. I'd wear my long black flamingo coat in June. I'd sing my song and watch 'em play my tune. Hell yeah, well it's clear, it's so crystal clear, yeah, yeah. We all need something to get us through the night. We all need something. It don't matter if it's wrong or right. All need something. I need something. Bernie, we need you. Now Bernie's been locked up. He's been incarcerated. Got his mugshot taken by the officer of the law, but he's still here fighting for us, trying to get things better for everybody. That's what I'm here for. Well, it's clear, so crystal clear. Yes, it's clear, so crystal clear, yeah. We all need something to get us through the night. We all need something, don't matter if it's wrong or right. All need something. I need something. Baby, I need you. Healthcare should be a human right. That's just, should go without saying. But that's so important. I mean, and so important to so many. I mean, I had so many people in my family. I just know so many people that, are beholden to a system that is not working for them. And so if we can actually bring about real change, and that's what he's talking about, that's what we need. That's what we need. That's what people need to understand, that Bernie stands for and that he's fighting for and has been fighting for. This one's called Black Man in America. Goes a little something like this. One people, well, two sides of life. One in hell, one paradise. That's waiting for you in the promised land. Brothers getting shot, no hesitation. A way of life for a generation. Yes, it's all true. You don't understand. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. We've been struggling 50 years, sacrificed through blood and tears, just trying to break through to this here promised land. You don't know what it's like to be a black man in America. You don't know what it's like to be a black man in America. Yeah, yeah. Protect yourself, don't apply. If If you ain't white, then you're born to die. You know they used to hang you right where you stand. History, Hollywood, image of the black man ain't no good. That's how they sell you. It's the master plan. Across the street, you lock your door, clutch your purse and then pray the Lord won't let me see you. What did I do wrong? Try to get a job on the application. When you check black for the information, they don't call you. Hey, you don't know what it's like to be a black man in America. Yeah. You don't know what it's like to be a black man in America. Yeah. No, you don't know. They don't know. You don't know to be a black man in America. No, you don't know.
You know, people have to get out of their comfort zone and stop thinking in terms of, oh, myself and what I can do for me. It's, we're all in this thing together. And if this, what's going on right now with this pandemic, if this doesn't teach us anything, it's that we are all in this together. We're only as good as our, sickest individual.
Everybody learns when we talk about history. All we ever wanted was a little peace and harmony. Show me love, show me unity. Respect you, respect me. Now we turn the page, everybody seems to understand. We're all in this together, 21st century man. Bright future, all God's children holding hands. We had a dream. We had a dream. Our world is on fire. It can't get much higher. Oh no, when we lie to our youth, it's the ultimate abuse. We're all birds with the birds of a feather. Fly, die, sink or swim, good or bad, stormy weather. Let's get high, talk about all the things we can do together. I'm with you, you're with me. Back in the day, we used to sing about love and peace. Peace, not war, all this hatred, it has to cease. Every color, you're my brother, together we stand. Fight or we fall, to the last man. Oh yeah, our world is on fire. It can't get much higher. Oh no, when we lie to our youth, it's the ultimate abuse. Oh yeah. All right, yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you.
Okay, 5, 4, 3.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And let me begin by thanking Andre Simone for his music. As all of us know, we are facing an extraordinary and unprecedented crisis in our country and around the world. We are looking at a global healthcare crisis as the coronavirus spreads throughout our country and throughout the world. And as a result of the growing healthcare crisis, we're looking at an economic crisis hitting our country. Today, all over America, working people are learning that they're no longer going to have a job. In many cases, they have no money in the bank, and they are worried about how they're going to put food on the table for their kids. And later on this evening, we're going to hear from two folks who are very knowledgeable about what's happening on the ground in terms of working people as this crisis expands. Sarah Nelson, as some of you may know, is the president of the American Association of Flight Attendants, and everybody knows that the airline industry has been hard hit by the crisis, and we'll want to hear from Sarah and get her views as to how she thinks the Congress should respond to the crisis. And Saru Jayaraman is a representative of the Restaurant Opportunity Center, and they're doing great work in representing the needs of workers in restaurants and in the tourism industry all over this country. Because, again, as everybody knows, restaurants, bars are being shut down, and many hundreds of thousands of workers are being laid off. So we'll want to hear from Saru's thoughts about how we can best proceed. In this extraordinary moment in American and world history, we have got to think outside of the box in a way that we have never done. This is an unprecedented moment, and we have got to think in an unprecedented way. And that means in terms of government action, in terms of our own behavior, how we make sure that we are not infecting other people, in terms of making sure that we are not turning our backs on the weakest and most vulnerable people in our country and in the entire world. So this is a moment that history will look back on and say, how did the people of the United States respond? Did they stand together? Did they come together? Did they panic? Did they turn on each other? And clearly our goal is to bring people together, to care for each other, to love each other, to respond with compassion, to understand that if we stand together in this very difficult moment, we will come out of it. Not without danger, not without death, not without sickness, not without economic pain, but we will come out of it if we stand together. And let me just begin by responding to the Republican plan on the coronavirus epidemic that was presented yesterday by Mitch McConnell, who is the majority leader in the U.S. Senate. And I have to say, without wanting to be tonight very partisan, to say that the Republican plan on its face is totally, totally inadequate. The Republican proposal provides massive tax breaks and subsidies to the wealthy and very large corporations, while providing little to no assistance to the people most in need, and that is our lowest income people and working families all across this country. This is a proposal which has distorted ideas, protecting those who don't need that much protection and ignoring the pain that so many Americans are today feeling. The Republican bill gives Trump's Treasury Department enormous flexibility to bail out the airlines, to bail out cruise ships, to bail out hotels and the tourism industry, while providing no funding to help the homeless or the most vulnerable people in our country. And that is a set of priorities that is just unjust and unfair. If you are a couple making $150,000 a year, you're doing pretty well. Under the Republican proposal, you would get a $2,400 check for $2,400. But if you are a senior citizen trying to survive on $13,000 a year from Social Security, you would receive a check for $600, one check for $600. If you are a college student, if you were a college student in 2018 who just got laid off from work last week, you would receive nothing, zero, from the Republican proposal, although you may have virtually nothing in the bank. In other words, this Republican proposal is a set of ideas that should go nowhere, should be rejected by the Democrats in the Congress, and we should sit down and work out a set of policies that work for working families, not just large corporations. And right now, as a senator from Vermont, As a member of the Democratic leadership, I am attempting to do just that. So without giving you a very long speech about all of the details that are involved in a serious proposal, I want to just outline some of what, in my view, I want everybody to understand this, and I think our guests later in the show are going to talk about this. Today, in America, unemployment offices are being flooded with applications from workers who have lost their jobs. The Secretary of Treasury recently said that unemployment in America may go as high as 20%. So all across this country, we have a situation where half of our people live in paycheck to paycheck. Under good times, they are struggling economically. We have a situation where 40% of the families in America cannot afford a $400 emergency. For 40% of the families, if their car breaks down, they're going to have to figure out how they get the money to repair that car. In other words, many of our people are already living in dire economic straits. And now, for many of them, they've lost their jobs. Their paychecks are stopping. So what we have got to do is to make certain that every single American receives the financial assistance they need to survive this crisis with dignity. Let me repeat that. A basic underlining principle of what we must do in Congress right now is to make certain that every American receives the financial assistance they need to survive this crisis with dignity. Those are people who have jobs today. Those are people who are unemployed. Those are senior citizens living on Social Security. Those are the homeless. Those are people who are in jail. Those are every aspect of our society must understand that in the midst of this terrible economic and health crisis, we are one nation, and the United States government is prepared to make everybody whole. Now, no matter what the government does, no matter how good the proposals are, everybody in this country, or most of us, are going to be living under a great deal of stress. Are we going to get the coronavirus? Are we passing it on to somebody else? What does it mean that our kids can't go to school? What happens if we have a mom or a dad in a nursing home where those people are so vulnerable to this crisis? So there's enormous stress that everybody in this country is experiencing. But in the midst of all that, the least that we can do is to make sure that all of our people receive the financial support that they can get. And I would say this is not just a radical idea coming from Bernie Sanders. As some of you may have heard today, the conservative government in the United Kingdom announced that workers there would receive a check from the government equivalent to 80% of their salaries. Denmark, I believe, had a program in which workers would get 75% of their salary. So ensuring that all working people do not suffer during the midst of this economic crisis is truly not a radical idea. It is a humane idea. It is exactly the right thing to do. Now, there has been a serious and I think productive debate in the Congress about how do you get the checks out? What is the mechanism? Because right now I worry and you worry that there are people who may not have the cash in the pocket they need to go out and buy the food to feed their families. They don't want to wait a month. They don't want to fill out 100 forms. They need those checks coming to them immediately. And in the midst of that debate, I think the growing consensus is that the fastest way to get a check sent out to people, or a direct deposit, as the case may be, is through an immediate expansion of the unemployment program. And right now, as I think some of you may know, the unemployment program is a result of all kinds of cutbacks, terrible cutbacks over the years. The result is that now approximately only 25% of workers in America are eligible for unemployment. So if you're a waiter, if you're a waitress, if you're an Uber driver, if you're doing you're an independent contractor, if you're doing one of a dozen jobs, you may not be eligible for unemployment. That has got to change. So the goal here is to say that we're going to greatly expand unemployment to cover every worker in America. We're going to provide 100% of the salaries that those workers were receiving so long as this crisis exists, with a cap of $75,000 a year. We also, in addition to that, because of ancillary costs that families are going to incur, we need to provide a $2,000 monthly payment to every man, woman, and child in America until this crisis ends. Now, the Republicans are talking about one check. What in God's name does a $600 check or a $2,000 check mean one time when you are unemployed? Yes, it may get you through 3 weeks, maybe stretch it, you get you through a month. But that is nowhere near what the working people of this country need and should have. Furthermore, we need to recognize that as the only major country on earth, and this is a long-term disgrace and long-term and ongoing disgrace, we need to make sure that every worker in America has paid family and medical leave. We are the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee that. That has got to stop. That has got to stop right now. Furthermore, I've talked a little bit about the economic impacts, which everybody is nervous about. But obviously, people are even more nervous about where we are from the coronavirus epidemic. In my view, we need an unprecedented emergency response to our current and growing healthcare crisis. In my view, we need to immediately provide the equipment that medical personnel need in order to protect themselves and do their jobs. Unbelievably. And again, this speaks to the dysfunctionality of our healthcare system and the lack of preparedness for a crisis like this. Can anyone believe that all over America, doctors do not have the masks and nurses do not have the masks or the protective gowns or the gloves that they need? And what has got to happen under the Defense Production Act, we have got to begin producing all of the equipment that our doctors need, because as I think everybody understands, that if our doctors, our nurses, our medical personnel go down, and some of them are already being infected with the virus, and they are incredibly vulnerable because they're face to face every day with people who have the virus. If our frontline defense goes down, then we are in really, really serious trouble. So we've got to do everything we can immediately, as quick as possible, make sure that we are protecting our medical personnel. Furthermore, and again, I think this is a no-brainer, but some in Congress don't agree with me, during this crisis, we need to make certain that everybody in our country who needs to go to a doctor for whatever reason gets the health care they need, regardless of their income. There is a lot of discussion right now which says, well, if you have the coronavirus, the government should make sure, the insurance companies should make sure that your testing is paid for and your treatment is paid for. That's fine. But what happens right now if you are diagnosed with a serious other illness? Are you going to go bankrupt now because you've been diagnosed with cancer or heart disease, or somebody in your family has Alzheimer's? So I think right now, and there are various ways to do that, we've got to make sure that every person in America has the health care they need. And this problem is becoming more acute, because when a worker loses his or her job today, they're not only losing that income, they're losing the health care that many private employers are providing. So there are ways to do that. I think the simplest way to do it probably is to make sure that Medicare covers all of the people who are uninsured or underinsured, and make sure that nobody in this country who has private insurance pays any out-of-pocket expenses. In other words, if you have a deductible, you should not have to pay out-of-pocket. If you have a co-payment, you should not have to pay out-of-pocket. That's Medicare filling in that gap. So the fight clearly continues to do what every other major country on earth has done, and that is provide health care to all people as a right. But right now, in this emergency, we must make certain that all Americans have all the health care they need above and beyond the protections they need for the coronavirus. Furthermore, we need to make sure that we provide the testing that everybody in this country needs, and that we move forward. And I know there's a lot of work going on in the country right now, that we move forward to do it in as quick a time period as we can. There are processes out there which in a few hours can let you know whether or not you have the virus. And what's important about that is you don't want people who do not have the virus to be occupying hospital beds. We want those beds available for people who need it the most. So there are procedures out there being developed in our country and around the world to expedite the processing of the coronavirus, and we should move on that and invest in that as significantly as we possibly can. Now, above and beyond making sure that all of our people have health care, that all of our people get the testing that they need, and that those tests are processed rapidly, making sure that we have enough ICU units, that we have enough ventilators, that we have enough hospital beds. Above and beyond all of that, we are going to have to provide a massive amount of money to states and cities throughout this country. There are some states now, as I understand it, that are less than a month away from not being able to pay their employees. And if our cities and our states are unable to pay their employees, if we don't have that workforce available, it will make it almost impossible to deal with the crisis. Furthermore, in the midst of this dual crisis of coronavirus and the economic meltdown, we need to make sure that we protect the weakest and most vulnerable people in our country. And I'm thinking right now that in my own state of Vermont and all over this country, you got elderly people on very low fixed incomes who are worrying about if anyone is going to visit them, how they're going to get the nutrition that they need. So we need to be expanding in a significant way the Meals on Wheels program, the school meals program, and the SNAP program, so that nobody in America goes hungry during this crisis. I mean, that's kind of something that is, I think, very basic. We have to make sure that everybody has the nutrition they need. In addition, we must place an immediate moratorium on evictions, foreclosures, and utility shutoffs, and suspend payments on mortgage loans for primary residences and for utility bills. And when I'm talking about utility bills, we're certainly talking about telephones, because if you don't have a telephone, you're not going to be able to communicate with anybody if you are trapped in your house. And by the way, we're talking about making sure that people can continue to have cable TV, because there's going to be a lot of information distributed via television. I don't want people's TV to be shut off as well. During this crisis, we need to make certain that no one loses their home, and that everyone has access to clean water, to electricity, to heat, and to air conditioning. In other words, the basic necessities of life must be continued regardless of the financial situation of the individual. We must also provide funding for states and localities to provide rental assistance. So it's not only preventing people from losing their homes, we will not accept millions of people facing eviction because they can't pay their rents. Furthermore, we should be covering all student loan payments for the duration of the emergency. If people don't have income coming in that's significant, they cannot be asked to pay off their student loan payments. And we must ensure that the homeless, survivors of domestic violence, and college students quarantined off campus are able to receive the shelter, the health care, and the nutrition they need as well. To the degree, on another very important issue, when my Republican colleagues are talking about bailing out the airlines, they're talking about bailing out the tourism industry or the cruise ship industry and other large entities, we must make certain in no uncertain terms that no bailout results in profiteering or unusual benefits going to the CEOs of these corporations and to the corporations themselves. This is a moment in which we are all in this together. This is the equivalent of a war, and we cannot allow large corporations to be profiteering. We cannot allow the drug companies to be profiteering in this moment. Any emergency credit extensions or loans to insolvent companies or industries as a result of this crisis must come with strict protections and benefits for workers, for unions, and customers, not no strings attached bailouts for executives. And that is a very important principle that we must operate under. We will put and must put conditions on this financial assistance to make sure that any corporation in America that benefits from emergency aid does not lay off their workers and pays workers a livable wage. In other words, if the government is going to provide assistance to large corporate interests, they must protect their workers. Furthermore, as work around the globe takes place right now, and we've got to invest in that as well, for a vaccine to treat people and prevent the spread of this terrible epidemic, we must make certain that the pharmaceutical industry, which has a long history of profiteering and greed and corruption, does not use this moment to profit from the pain and fear of so many people. Further, all prescription drugs that are developed with taxpayer dollars must be sold to the American people at a reasonable price. It is outrageous, unspeakable. Taxpayers put huge amounts of money into the development of drugs. The drugs are developed, and then the companies charge outrageous prices such that many people can't even afford the drugs they help to pay for development. The pharmaceutical industry during this crisis must be told in no uncertain terms that the medicines that they manufacture for this crisis will be sold at cost. No profiteering here. All right, let me, right now, we're going to have to, for technical reasons here, we're going to go to some music, and that music is going to be provided to us from NACO. And after we hear the music from NACO, we're going to be having a discussion with Sarah Nelson, who will talk to us about one of the industries hit hardest by the economic downturn, and that is the airline industry, and what that means to the people in her union who are the flight attendants. So stay tuned for some really good music, and in a few minutes we're going to come back with Sarah Nelson, president of the American Association of Flight Attendants. See you in a minute.
Ya'ate, mabuhay, aloha. This is Nako. This is my Bernie 2020 sessions. This song is called Dear Brother.
Dear brother, when you gonna call back your mother? Thinks you're sleeping in the gutter. We both know you can do better.
When you gonna write your older brother a letter? Hey man, I miss you, getting my shit together. And for the record, I wrote this note as a reminder that in my yo, there's a future you can believe in. Gonna take more than songs of justice and freedom. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a future you can believe in. Gonna take more than songs of justice and freedom. Freedom, yeah.
If you're thinking about leaving, hold my hand, overstand this too could be your kingdom. Blessed And when the rain comes, put your hands in the dirt, Baba, this is where you came from. 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 Systems broken, no fucks given. Wealthy people living on the backs of the broken. Dreams of America. Dreams of America. Need a pipe carrier. Let me smudge you off so the vision can get clearer. Your mother's crying, boy, can you hear her? What I see in you, a young tree bearing fruit, place to start. Oh, don't hide behind your heart. You gotta put down the weight. You gotta get out of your way. You gotta put down the weight. You gotta get out of your way. Dear lover, you can find me on the front lines covered in the blood and tears of another brother, sister, mother. Revolution being broadcast on Facebook and Twitter. There's a noise. I can hear it when the megaphone roars. Wipe the tears from this tear gas choice. You have a choice. Stand in front of your fear, baby. Try to find your voice. It's a story, a love story. You can believe in death, birth. Your life's worth is trending. A story, a love story. How vain are we to expect a happy ending? I got my hands up, follow directions, still they shoot us. I'm fucking sick and tired of no justice, no peace. Promise me you'll never pick your body off the streets. We're all taking heat here. Oh, the trust is broken, I don't get these police. Franchise, step into a new life. Baby, if you listen to the wind of the war cry, peace in America. Peace in America. Be decent, America. Let me smudge you off so the vision can get clearer. Your mother's crying, can you hear her? What I see in you, a young tree bearing fruit, place to start. Oh, don't hide behind your heart. You gotta put down the weight. You gotta get out of your way. You gotta put down the weight. You gotta get out of your way. Oh, you gotta put down the weight. You gotta get out of your way. You gotta put down the weight. You gotta get out of your way.
Yeah. Let me thank Norco for the music, and let me welcome to this discussion Sarah Nelson. Sarah is the president of the American Association of Flight Attendants, one of the great unions in this country, which represents 50,000 flight attendants at 20 different airlines. Sarah, all across this country, workers are being laid off. Workers are worried about their future. There is probably no industry that has been harder hit than the airline industry. Can you tell us what's going on there and how your workers are being impacted?
Sure. So we've been on the front lines of the coronavirus for over 2 months now because, of course, our work takes us all around the world. And we have been using the training that we fought for through OSHA to be able to try to keep ourselves protected. We actually worked with the airlines to put in place protective equipment and make sure that people were getting good information, and also had the support that they needed to be able to get off the job if they needed to. The airlines didn't do everything that we asked them to do, but they did a lot. They did a lot more than we've seen in the past from the federal government. So what we then started to see is that flight attendants who were sick were actually not able to get tests. There were some who were sick and in the hospital and were told that tests were rationed to 42 a day. Another had been sick for 5 or 6 days and still couldn't get tested. But we really did our work to try to keep people safe, and we did that with our training that we've worked for and the protective gear that we've tried to have in place. And now, of course, we're worried about our jobs.
Right. So you have a dual crisis for your members.
Yeah.
An airplane is not a great place to be working on when people are sick in any case, and certainly with coronavirus.
Correct.
So, there are a lot of people who are no longer traveling on planes for that reason, but your people are on those planes, and they're coming from all over the world. All right.
Yeah,
so
yes, that's correct. Except for the travel restrictions.
Right. All right. So we got a healthcare crisis, and some of your people, are some of your people calling in sick now, or?
Well, yes, and because we are 80% unionized in the airline industry, we have sick leave protections, and we have been there to be able to interface with the airlines and try to help people. But this has really overtaken the industry. And so once it's in our communities, what's happening today is that the flight attendants who are still able to get work, I should be very clear, all of the industries have been running at high productivity in this country, as we know. So people have depended upon overtime hours because their pay has not increased. So to make ends meet, people have been working overtime hours to make those ends meet. And as the flights have gotten pulled down, already our flight attendants have not been able to get that work. And so people are already feeling the financial pinch. But now what we're seeing is, because this is so pervasive and we are essentially not having anyone travel, the airlines are cutting back those flights, and now there's no flights, and now we're looking at massive furloughs. Half of our workforce, if not 70 or 80% before we're done in the next 30 days. And the airlines are going to run out of money to even be able to make payroll in a couple months, if not weeks or days for some of them. Yesterday, we had the closing down of 2 different airline operations, and it's very, very difficult. And so people are really starting to understand the real hurt that the whole country is going to be facing here.
I understand that just today, was it Air Canada laid off, furloughed 5,000 workers?
Yes, half of their population. So that is the same here in the U.S., but I have to tell you that's not even really the accurate numbers. It's going to be much, much deeper than that.
All right, what happens to a flight attendant who in the near future learns that she or he is furloughed? What are their options? What happens to them?
So normally what happens is that there is a process for a voluntary leave or voluntary furloughs where we continue benefits for people, and it can be quite attractive. And normally we are able to stave off involuntary furloughs because we've been able to negotiate a rather attractive program for people who can afford to take that time off, and then also get some unemployment pay. But in this situation, the numbers are so great that there is no way that we are going to be able to get the volunteers. And what's happening now is flight attendants are going to work on their layover locations, and in the airports. Restaurants are closed down. They can't get it in the hotels. They work long hours. They try to go get it at their grocery stores. Sometimes the grocery stores are closed, or the non-perishable items that they would be able to pack on their trips to be able to eat are gone. So this is the reality. We're facing a real crisis here. And so we are proposing a worker-centered relief package. No more bailouts. We've seen that in the past. Bernie, you know what we went through. We went through all of the hurt after 9/11, and we saw the kind of bailouts that happened after that. And when they're always focused on the banks and the corporations, they don't work. You have to focus on the individual people to make this work. And so our proposal is about starting with keeping the paychecks going. We don't need the federal government to be the HR solution for everyone. We already have paycheck process in place with many of our corporations. We can remove save all those people who would otherwise be on unemployment, and we'd be trying to make all of this work by just keeping the paychecks going and keeping them in their jobs so that we can restart the economy on the other side of this. So that's what we're proposing, is that there's direct subsidies.
Sarah, let me just go over. If the federal government bails out, say, the airline industry, you want that airline industry to maintain their workforce and workers to continue to get their paychecks.
Yes, absolutely. And what we're saying is no more corporate bailouts. This is a worker relief program that continues the paycheck. We can use the corporate payroll systems, but that money is earmarked for going to workers. In the past, what happens is a big check comes to the corporation and they decide how to spend it. And so when they do that, they come to the unions and they say, we can't make this work, so we're going to have concessions from you. At least there's discussion when you have a union. When you don't have a union, they just force it on the workers. So that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is to continue the paychecks to all the workers, keep people in their jobs, even if not on the job, able to care for their families. And yes, we're not going to have those overtime hours, so it's going to hurt still, but it is going to keep people safe and allow them to be able to shelter safely, take care of their families safely. And what we need, especially in this public health crisis, is we need as many people who can take care of themselves and are strong today to continue to be able to take care of themselves so that we can focus on the sick and vulnerable.
All right, now the irony here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in the last number of years, many of the companies in the airline industry have engaged in massive stock buybacks. Is that right?
Yes, they have. And we have opposed those every single time because that needed to go back into investing in the workers, investing in the company, or saving for more difficult times.
All right, well, what Sarah is saying, and I absolutely agree with, is we are sick and tired of bailouts for large corporations, and then these companies turn their backs on workers. This time, that is not going to be the case. So what Sarah is saying, and I think it's true for the airline industry, it's true for flight attendants, it's true for workers all over this country. Hey, corporations, if we are going to bail you out, then you're going to make whole your employees. You're not going to throw them out on the street. You're going to keep them on the payroll. You're going to maintain your infrastructure, so when this thing is over, and it will be over, workers can come back and regain their employment.
That's right. And then what we're saying is for the rest of what the airlines need to continue to keep that infrastructure in place, there should be direct loans from the government, but there should be certain requirements on those loans. So no more stock buybacks, no executive bonuses, no dividends, a $15 minimum wage, seats on the board, and bankruptcy protection so that contracts can't be broken. So these are the things that we're demanding, and absolutely no more stock buybacks. We have got to restructure the system so we're focused on the people. Now, some people have said, hey, let the airlines go bankrupt, and then we can buy them out of bankruptcy as a federal government, and we can own them, and then we can return it to the workers. That is a great idea. That is a great chess move, but we are not chess pieces. We're real people, and real people are hurting right now, need to feed their families. They're very concerned about how they're going to get through, and especially in this public health care crisis when people are dying, we do not need one more person to die because they didn't have the assistance that they needed to take care of themselves and their families.
Well, I just want to thank you, Sarah, for the great work you are doing, and somebody who flies a great deal, to thank the flight attendants. And everybody has got to know, a closed chamber like a airplane is not the healthiest place in the world to be. And the disease goes around, and the airline attendants, flight attendants are there all of the time, traveling all over the world. So we thank you for the work you're doing. We thank your members for the work they're doing. And some of us in Congress are going to fight to make sure that you come out of this hole.
Thank you so much. And we hope that we're setting a blueprint for the rest of the workers around the country. We're going to make ourselves strong so that we can help other people and lift them up too. And we're not going to leave anyone behind. And I know you're all for that. Not me, us, President Sanders.
Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Ya'ate, Mabuhay, and Aloha. My name is Nako, and this is my Bernie 2020 session. The song's called Love Letters to God. Always give what you can, even if you lost your lives in the sand. And dig, always dig a little deeper. Sometimes it's hard to be my brother's keeper. Love, so you let love in. Baby, I am home in the wake of your skin. And it's crazy how we wear a ceremony. Always be open to your path and your journey, yes. She cradles my loneliness, a homeland I for each nest. Universal test, feel the weight of my love. Put your hand on my chest to rest. In the cradle of my arms, the battle that we faced is the place where our scars come from. And to pick up the gun, my love, we are destined to teach these ones to be brave and never run away. Courage is birthed from the womb on the first light of day. Yeah, the day you were born, you came out perfect, never meant to be torn in silence. Never been so loud in the violence, never been so proud of a people. When we're fighting for a change, not afraid to lose it all. Despite all the rage, we are animals, and we cannot be caged. Provoke us to fight, so we burn a little sage and write poetry. Wiser than the enemy will ever be, the minority and authority. Are you here to protect or arrest me? I can't tolerate the hate and I'm losing sleep. Can't breathe cause they're choking out war in me. Immorality, yeah. Love letters to God. I wonder if she reads them or if they get lost in the stars. Stars in the stars. So many parts to a heavy heart. If there's no beginning, then where would you start? Start, where would you start? So we carve them into story totem poles, cause we're always searching for a certain goal, a pattern of physics or role. Don't believe all you're told and open up your fist. A misconception, you can fight like this and praise. With the power of prayer of God's on our side, you can take the stairs to the heavens. Flipping through my chapter 7, I live with the snakes and the great deception. No court in this country from men who steal from the mother on paper with pen. And we're tripping down a red dirt road and we're asking, is this the way we should go? Kissing soft top feet, oh my God, this we'll walk the earth, baby, yeah, we got this focus. And it's redirected, grateful, and I'm resurrected, stubborn, but I know the way. Through the skin on my drum, to your rhythm I will sway. Take my hand, I won't lead you astray. We will not go gently into the darkest of days. Grandma's here, and she says persevere. Take a walk in her mox, take the trail of tears. And our fears are the same as they ever were beers. Numb the pain of a Holocaust years. Always mobbing in motion, maybe being not under a notion. Your arches, how they bend and contract on my conscience. Never slip through the grip of my thesis. And my theory is I shine in your presence. A deliverance, yeah. Love letters to God. Wonder if she reads them or if they get lost in the stars. Stars in the stars.
What Saru is doing right now is trying her best, and her organization trying its best to represent workers who have been incredibly hard hit by the current economic meltdown. I think in the city that I am in right now, in Burlington, Vermont, and cities all over this country, restaurants are closing, bars are closing, convention centers are closing, and those people who work in that industry are being laid off by the tens of thousands. So, Saru, thank you so much for being with us. And maybe if you could, let's begin by describing the current economic reality for the industry.
So I really think it's important to understand the reality that existed before coronavirus, because there were very deep structural inequities that existed in our industry prior. And I just wanted to clarify also, I founded the Restaurant Opportunity Center, but I lead a national coalition now that includes the Restaurant Opportunity Center called One Fair Wage, that has been fighting to eliminate the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers in the United States. That is still $2.13 an hour, which is a ludicrous shame for the United States of America. And especially it's a shame for the nation's largest and fastest growing industry, which is the restaurant industry. We hit almost the 14 million mark before the coronavirus, but we were the absolute lowest bottom of the barrel employer because of the power of a trade lobby called the National Restaurant Association. So here you are, you've got millions of workers paid $2 an hour or $3 or $4, depending on their state.
Let me interrupt you if I could, so that everybody understands. I mean, what you're saying sounds so preposterous, maybe hard for people to believe you. But as all of you know, right now we have a horrifically low federal minimum wage of $7.25. That is terrible. For waiters and waitresses and people in the tip economy, it is much lower than that. And that's what Saru is talking about. Unbelievable. It really is quite unbelievable.
It's a literal legacy of slavery, because the first tipped workers were hired after emancipation by the Restaurant Association, which demanded the right to hire them for nothing and let them live on tips because they were black. We went from zero in emancipation to $2.13 an hour today. And it is now 70% women working as waitresses in IHOPs and Denny's and small mom and pop restaurants across America. These are the women who've been largely laid off as a result of this crisis. And if you can imagine how horrible it is to think about unemployment insurance on the minimum wage, I want you to just think about unemployment insurance on a $2 wage plus tips. How ridiculous and crazy that is, especially when tips are a rough calculation. Neither the workers nor the employers nor the government has a clear understanding of how much these workers make in tips. There are a lot of cash tips. And so an unemployment insurance as a measure of a $2 wage plus tips is a non-starter. It's nothing. And when you couple that with the fact that the vast majority of these workers don't even qualify for unemployment insurance, not just because of their status, we have a lot of documented immigrants who are refusing to apply for unemployment insurance because they know it will hurt their applications for permanent residency or for citizenship, because the government is going to see them as a burden on the state. But even beyond that, there are millions of workers who are not eligible because they don't work enough hours or they haven't worked long enough in the restaurant. And so our numbers show the majority of these workers won't get unemployment insurance.
Let me interrupt you then again, because sometimes people say, what she's saying really can't be true. Sounds a little bit crazy.
Right.
I heard recently, I should have known this, somebody told me that 3/4 of American workers are not eligible for unemployment compensation. And this is a result, year after year, of Republican attacks on the entire social welfare network. But your point is well taken. You have workers out there who cannot get unemployment.
That's right, the majority. That's the majority.
The checks will be minuscule.
That's right.
I hate to interrupt you, but I wanted to...
No, it's critical to understand that while you've got the Republicans putting forward massive bailouts, that you're talking about unemployment insurance that will not impact most workers in our industry, and for those that get it, it's measured on a $2 or $3 wage. And even if they're talking about cash payments, cash relief to these workers, so many workers are not going to be able to access that due to status, or again, because they're documented but don't want to accept payment because it will not be favorable when they apply for citizenship. So we've got a very, very broken system, and I think the hope that I am seeing is that a lot of workers are waking up, a lot of employers even are waking up, because so many had to lay off so many people and realize that so many of their employees were living tip to mouth. And I've been saying that phrase a lot in the last couple of days, tip to mouth. Friday, March 13th, Friday the 13th, thousands of restaurants and bars shut down across America. People got tips on that day. Maybe they used those tips to feed their families on Saturday and Sunday. Come Monday, they have literally nothing to feed their kids.
So do we have any ideas, all across this country, restaurants and bars are being shut down. Do we have any idea of how many workers have been laid off?
Our estimate is about 4 million that have either been laid off or are at immediate risk of being laid off right now. But the industry, as I mentioned, is over 13 million, getting closer to 14 million. I think we're going to see at least another 8 to 9 million workers laid off in the next couple of weeks. You are talking about a disaster along the lines I don't think we've seen since the Great Depression.
All right, so your workers are low paid. Many of them are very low paid. And now they're going to lose their job. Many of them, I imagine, have very little in the bank.
That's right.
Limited resources.
Nothing.
What happens to these? Most of them women.
Yes. Vast majority. 70% are women. 40% are single mothers. They can barely afford the rent. I can't tell you the number of workers who before coronavirus told us stories like, I feed my kids with my tips. Me, myself, I go eat during what they call family meal at the restaurant. That's my meal for the day, is when the restaurant feeds us before work. Or I work 3 jobs and we live out of my car because I can't afford the rent. This was before coronavirus. Now that income is gone. And so on top of having nothing to feed themselves, they have nothing to feed their children. That is a disaster of the highest proportions.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I worry every single day. There are people in the restaurant industry and other industries there right now, saying, I don't have any money to feed the kids.
That's right.
All right, tell me what you would like. First of all, congratulations for what you're doing, and what you are exposing is forget the coronavirus for a moment. And what that is doing to the economy and to the health concerns. And I would imagine that your waitresses and waiters and people in your industry are in contact with a whole lot of people.
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm sure
all kinds of stuff, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Food, okay.
Yes.
So they're concerned about health issues as well. But I think the first point to be made is that even under normal times, it is outrageous about how many people are struggling economically in that industry. That should not be happening in the United States of America. If you work 40 hours a week, you should be earning a living wage. Many of your people are not. And now we got the crisis of the layoffs and the coronavirus. Okay, what would you like to see Congress do?
Congress, first of all, needs to change unemployment policy. It needs to apply to everybody, and it needs to be applied based on a $15 minimum wage plus tips. You know, if this moment has not exposed why a $2 wage is ridiculous, shameful, a literal legacy of slavery, I don't know what moment could make it clearer. And so rather than measuring these workers' unemployment insurance based on $2 plus tips, it needs to be measured based on $15 plus tips, and it needs to be applied across the board. We need to see this as a public health disaster, because what happens when everybody can't access unemployment insurance? I'll tell you what happens. First thing that happens, people leave their homes. They start moving in together. They start having communal kitchens, because what else can they do? They start lining up at soup kitchens or other places to get food, because what else can they do? And what does that do to our public health disaster? And so unless we reevaluate how we're giving out unemployment insurance, unless we think about social safety nets that actually apply to everybody, this is a disaster that will finally show America that even the 1% are not immune when the 99% is suffering. They're not immune because the public health disaster is brought to their door. And so what we need is to everybody to go to ofwemergencyfund.org. We are supporting not just restaurant, but other service and tipped workers, Uber, Lyft, Instacart, DoorDash drivers, nail salon, car wash. All kinds of tipped workers are applying to this fund. We are about to hit the 100,000 worker mark. About 3 workers are applying every minute. We need you to donate to the fund so that we can actually get these workers cash, at least for groceries for the month. And then there's also a volunteer button, and you've got Senator Sanders, an amazing base of people who could help us, because we are calling every single one of those 100,000 workers. We are organizing them, screening them for their need, and registering them to vote. Because a lot of the workers are saying, I cannot believe I'm in this situation after decades of work. I have nothing to feed my kids. I'm ready to organize. And we need an army of volunteers to help us call people, get them into the system, register them to vote. And so you can click the volunteer button. We'll send you a list of volunteers. We'll train you how to make the calls. We'll send you a script. It's really easy. So we need you to spread the word, donate, and volunteer. That's what we can do together. And then we need to push on the government to change these social safety nets. We need to fight for one fair wage, a full minimum wage with tips on top once and for all.
So we'll give your website again, please.
It's www.OFW, O like O1 fair wage, OFW emergencyfund.org.
Are you hearing concerns about the health aspects of the coronavirus?
Absolutely. Everybody's terrified. I mean, everybody's terrified. I just think all of us are terrified. I think when you think about a single mother who has to take care of her kids, there's a kind of an order of survival, right? Feed my children, stay in my home if I have a home, and then worry about the fact that we're going to get infected. I mean, all three things relate to survival. And it's just not the situation that the United States of America should be. And I want to reiterate, this is not a tiny industry that's getting $2 an hour or that has gotten. This is the largest and fastest growing industry in America. This is the largest employer of women, allowed to pay $2 an hour. If nothing has exposed why greed does not work in our country, this has to.
I think what Saru is talking about is, and it's unfortunate that it takes the kind of crisis we are experiencing right now to bring it to the fore. But there have been millions and millions of people, not unemployed, but working and working hard, who don't have the income to take care of their kids, to have a decent home for their kids. And this is the economy before coronavirus, and those people are now on the line and are facing very frightening times. I can only imagine how frightened the people in the industry are right now. All I can say is I agree with you that we have got to make sure that every American gets unemployment, and that unemployment is based on a living wage, not $2 an hour, which is not going to do much good. Anything else you want to share with us, Ruth?
I do. I want to point out that there are 800 restaurants that have been working with us for the last several years who actually believe in a livable wage for their workers, no sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. They're all over the country. And you can actually support those restaurants with food delivery or just gift certificates. You can find them on the ROC National Diners Guide, which is a free app in your app store. But I also want to say another thing the government can do, rather than mass bailouts, or maybe in addition to bailouts, is look at special relief, incentives, rent relief, tax relief for employers who actually commit to one fair wage, commit to a full livable wage after the crisis.
Right.
That's the kind of policy that will help us after the crisis move away from a system that never worked in the first place.
We must demand, if corporations are going to get help from the government, they must be decent corporate citizens.
That's right.
And treating their workers with respect, their environment with respect, and so forth. I just want, first of all, thank you very much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to a whole lot of people and explaining to them what is going on in your industry and the suffering that so many of the workers there are now experiencing and have experienced. Let's go forward together, and I would urge everybody to go to the website. Say it one more time.
Thank you. OFWemergencyfund.org.
All right, let's give a support to the restaurant workers as best we can. Saru, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, being with us this evening, I think what you have just heard from two frontline organizers, Sarah and Saru, what is going on in the airlines industry, what's going on in the restaurant industry. But the truth is, this economic meltdown is taking place all across the economy. As I mentioned earlier, unemployment offices all across this country are being flooded with applications. Now is the time, in this unprecedented moment in modern American history, for the United States Congress to have the courage to do the right thing in addressing the healthcare crisis that exists now, that will be getting worse. We've got to protect our medical personnel because they are the frontline defense. We've got to make sure that our hospitals and doctors' offices have the equipment that they need. We must greatly expand through the Defense Production Act all of the stuff that the medical profession needs. And I'm talking about kits for the coronavirus, making sure that those tests are processed rapidly. We have got to make sure that everybody in this country, in this emergency, does not have to worry about a medical bill. And as you've just heard from Sarah and Saru, we've got to make sure that every worker in this country is made whole in this crisis. If the United Kingdom, under a conservative government, can guarantee its workers 80% of their salary, we can do even better. What the Republicans have produced is totally useless. It is, I mean, if it wasn't such a frightening and scary moment, it would be laughable. But no one's laughing about anything anymore. You can't give workers a check for $1,000 or $2,000 and say, that's about it. Not when people are unemployed right now, have no money in the bank. They need sustained support. So we have got to make sure that every worker in this country continues to receive a paycheck, that every person in this country gets the $2,000 they need for all of the other issues that they are dealing with. We make sure that no worker in America, no person in America, loses their home or is evicted from their apartment or sees their telephone shut off. There's a lot of work to be done. Let's bring the American people together. Let's go forward together. Let's show the world that the United States of America can play a leadership role in addressing this unprecedented crisis. So let me thank all of you very, very much for being with us tonight. We'll be back shortly with some more discussion about how we can best go forward. Good night, and thank you all very much.